Hey everybody, Reverend Geek here, and let's talk about wokeness. Now, in sci-fi, we know that shows can go on, and shows are going to change, and they're not going to be everybody's flavor of the month, as it would be. But we look at TV shows today, and we see a lot of wokeness. We see a lot of, stuff going on. There's some big stuff going on with Marvel right now and what they've done. But then we look at something like this picture where people knew that the Klingons in the Next Generation really looked different when you looked at Worf, but then Star Trek Discovery really changes looks, and you're kind of wondering, well, what's going on here? So the point of this is not to sit there and say that uh, the wokeness is ruining franchises like Star Trek, Star Wars, and Doctor Who, but that really the shows are changing drastically in certain styles that aren't going to be favorable with certain people. I mean, let's look at um, Star Trek right now. Now, Star Trek is this beloved franchise. Not everything has been well liked. We look at Star Trek, the original series. There's even Star Trek, the animated series, which I forgot to put in here. But there are different things that are going on, and we just wonder what is going on. Shows are not always going to be well liked, well received. We look at the original series, well loved. The animated series has earned its favor. We look at how basically the Next Generation was well received. And then we get to DS9, Star Trek DS9. And I think it's without a doubt, people will admit that when DS9 started, it was not well liked for its time. And the reason being is because it just started out slow. The first couple of seasons started slow, and then we got into the Dominion War, and it really found its ground. Plus, also, by about that time, TNG was not being produced. Granted, they were starting to work on Voyager, but that was the thing. Discovery, DS9 for its well-being found its traction and became one of the more beloved series. Then we get into Voyager and we start hearing tired, the show's tired, it's not engaging, characters are leaving, they're bringing eye candy in with Seven of Nine, all this stuff. And what we don't understand is that by this time the show is coming in and it's not really the show that we want, but it's the show we need. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because now when people look at it, they see a show that they love because they didn't have Star Trek for the longest time, and they've grown to appreciate it. The same thing happens when we look at Enterprise. Enterprise is a show that really was killed off too quickly before its time, and because of that, now people are going back and they're rewatching the show and they're like, hey, the show isn't as bad as I remember it. So it becomes this thing, is Star Trek Discovery as bad as people are making it? Now, here's going to be my argument. My argument is you're going to have groups split down the middle where one side is all for it, the other side is all against it. And I'm in the middle. I'm going to say it's not the best Trek. The first season was a mess. Well, I'm working my way through the second season right now, and I'll tell you, the second season is much better than the first season. And the thing is we look at it, we say, oh, there's all this mess, there's all this stuff. Yeah, there's going to be stuff that comes in, and we're going to get into this when we talk about Doctor Who, but there's stuff that comes in that people are not going to like that is going to be introduced as part of the new canon. But that's the thing, we look at what's going on from the original series to Picard now, and this is the thing, it's really what is out there is a series. It's trying to keep some of the flavor of Star Trek. There's some wokeness there, but hey, let's look back at the original series. You know what? The original series, what was the big thing? One of the biggest things was the first interracial kiss between Kirk and Uhura. And you know what? That today would be called wokeness. So I'm not saying that all wokeness is good, then I'm not saying all wokeness is bad. There are some things where we have to sit there and say, okay, in this case, I'm going to give it to the original series, but please don't force stuff down my throat. They did that once, and that was it. It wasn't in every episode after that. There wasn't, that stuff going on. So we have to kind of look at it and say, okay, if that's the case, then, maybe it's not as bad as I remember. And that's the thing. We got to look at this. We got to say, all right, that's it. I mean, if we want to talk about wokeness, wokeness would be taking this character right here, a beloved character at that, and we look at what they've done to him in the current series, and they say, well, we made him into a tribute to George Takei. But Mr. Sulu in the original series was straight, was always after the ladies. And in the new movies, the Kelvin universe, they made him into what George Takei is. And I think George Takei, might sit there and look at it and say, okay, yeah, I appreciate it, but as an actor, he's going to sit there and say, you know what, it wasn't necessary. I was a gay man playing a straight man. And I think that is one thing that, you look at George Takei for this role, you look at Neil Patrick Harris for his role on How I Met Your Mother, and, it gets you wondering when Hollywood takes wokeness to a super level, whereas, we look at this and say, okay, this is the thing. We gotta take this. So we get into, how it is. Did this come into the Next Generation? Did it come into any of the other series? No. I think Next Generation was very much definitely in the flavor of the original series, mainly because Roddenberry was active with it. So there was going to be a lot of things that he was going to bring into it. But for the most part, I will say that I think the series held its own, was, definitely in that tradition with the show and did well. But then like I said, you look at what happens after the fact, and after the fact, we know that there was, problems with the series. Series started out slow. If I remember rightly, DS9 was the first series that Roddenberry was not active with. He was there for the beginning and the processes of beginning the series, but passed away before it saw the light of day. And that's when, people will sit there and say, oh, well, that's when it was ruined. But again, DS9 became a good show. And then we look at Voyager and we say that takes, precedent. It takes that thing. And who knows, then we get into Doctor Who. Now, Doctor Who, let's face it this way. I think the current season, and I'm going to say spoilers here, the current season really has been picking up. I think the first the first series of any new Doctor is really trying to find the actor's footing as the latest incarnation of the Doctor. Let's be honest. The first season of David Tennant, he was really trying to find his own voice. He was coming off a one shot, two doctors that had one shots. We had McGann as the 8th Doctor and Eccleston as the 9th Doctor. And then he comes in and he's got to start to lay the groundwork to do a longer run. And he did. He did well, passed it on to Matt Smith brilliantly. The two of them were great doctors. And then we get into the Capaldi years, and that's when I think a lot of people, that was the thing. You had a great actor in Tennant playing 10, and he was great. That whole first scene with Smith, I think, really said it. So I'll be honest, my Doctor is Tennant, my wife's is Smith. And we laughed that, that's the way. But she goes back to that one episode and sees how Tennant's regeneration into Smith is, and that's what sets the pace for her. And so it was really well done. But, now we look at what's going on, and the Doctor for years was always a male. On top of that, it was established in The Deadly Assassin that the Time Lords only had 12 regenerations, so 13 bodies, 13 persons. And then there was a lot of question and speculation over the years. The Brain of Morbius set it up. Were those possible people that we see in the Mindscape? Was that other doctors that we hadn't seen, or was that other, was that Morbius's regenerations we didn't know? That became a big question. Then, of course, we look at what happened between, people got smart and said, well, what if between the 8th Doctor and the 9th Doctor there was a secret Doctor? And that's what happened. We got the War Doctor out of that. Love it or hate it, I think Moffat really did well with that, because when you look at what Davies did with Tennant having the regeneration that was kind of like aborted there, people were wondering, okay, does that count as a regeneration? What's going to happen? All sorts of things. He used it to say yes, and that the War Doctor was the true 9th Doctor, and so we got into this whole thing. So when we got to 11, we found out he was actually the 13th Doctor, if you will. And we got into this whole thing of, well, how's he going to get it? If the Time Lords don't exist, how's he going to be able to get another regeneration? And it was kind of in that thing that the Time Lords, through the crack in time, were able to send him regeneration energy. Well, then we look at what happened this season on Doctor Who, and we find out that the Doctor is the timeless child, and basically the reason for Time Lord society to exist. She is the reason why there is this endless cycle of regenerations and everything. It's something with her DNA, all this stuff. And people are sitting there, oh, the show is ruined. You gave us a female Doctor. It's ruined. It's woke. There's all this stuff. Now I'm going to get into this, and I'm going to say this. Okay, some of the politicking on the global scale, on global warming and all that, okay, that's going to happen. I'm not excited about it, but people, please do not tell me that they got woke by giving us a female Doctor, because here's the thing. we had a female master for 3 years under the Capaldi years, and I didn't hear anybody complain. In fact, everybody was like, "Oh, Missy is deliciously evil," and Missy and the Doctor have this great chemistry and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying to myself, that's kind of odd that all of a sudden we take our hero, the Doctor, and make the Doctor into a female, and nobody is sitting there giving her a chance to develop. And I think this season was much better than last season. And it's going to be that way. I mean, if Chibnall sticks around for a little while, we're going to see it. He's going to find his footing. Maybe he moves on. I don't know. But I think it's one of those things where we're going to look back. A lot of people did not like Capaldi when he first came in. I remember people complaining, he's too old, he's too this, he's too that. And I think he was a very entertaining Doctor. Probably, he's definitely in my top 5 Doctors, which, is an accomplishment because, like I said, Tennant's my Doctor, so he's my number 1. Smith is one of my Doctors. I think he's definitely in my top 5. And then I'm going to I throw in the 4th Doctor there. And, I even I'm going to say this, and I know he's not a well-liked version probably, and no, it's not the 6th Doctor, it's the 7th Doctor. I like the 7th Doctor because there was that mystery that they were trying to do. But that's the thing. We look at what's going on, and people are all over the place. They're complaining about it and what's going to happen. Hey, you know what, people? Just relax. It's a show. Is the writing going to be the best all the time? No. There are shows that go through dry spells, and then there are shows that, pick up. Smallville was one of those ones. It dried out in the 6th and 7th season, and then in season 8, it started picking back up. By season 10, it was good, but by that time, so many people were complaining about it, that's all you heard. And I know of people that will not follow shows because people sit there and say, this is it. I'm not going to follow this show anymore. And that, to me, is one of the saddest things. So the thing is, I'm saying give her a chance. If you've turned the Doctor off, if you've turned Doctor Who off, give the Doctor a chance. I'm telling you, first season of every Doctor is always just trying to find their footing, but then boom, it just reels you in. And that's the thing. And this season, I think, was much better. As much as people are saying, "Oh, well, they ruined it with the Doctor being the timeless child." You know what? Originally, we were told that the Doctor had endless regenerations, and then they retconned that with the Deadly Assassin. So, explain to me how this ruined it. How this did this. It's always that thing. We just have to stick around and see how it happens, what happens. And as somebody said, does the Doctor have endless regenerations? We do not know. We'll just have to see. But in the meantime, you know what? I'm just going to sit back. I'm waiting for the holiday special at the end of the year, and we'll see what happens, Other than that, hey, enjoy the show. That's all I can say. Those gentlemen right there have set the pace for us all. I mean, here she is. Give her a chance. But after that, that's it. Let's get to the Star Wars. Star Wars. Everybody does not like the sequel trilogy. Oh no, wait, there are people that like the sequel trilogy. Here's the thing. I grew up loving Star Wars as a kid. The original trilogy was my thing. I have pretty much every line in the final act of Return of the Jedi memorized. And I know people are going to say, what? But you know what? That was, for me, that was the accumulation of 3 movies. When I was growing up in 1983, I thought that was it. I didn't see another movie until 1999 with this one, The Phantom Menace. And when this one came out, I went out and I saw it 4 times in the theaters. And you know what? I don't regret it. I can't really watch this one now because I'm sitting there, you know, turned off to certain things, but it's still Star Wars. Still has one of the best lightsaber duels in the whole saga. But here's the thing. We sit there and we complain about it. And I know guys that they didn't grow up on the original trilogy like I did. And so now they sit there and they say, well, what's going to happen? Whoa. You know, here's the thing. Um, those guys that didn't grow up really watching the original trilogy, like they got introduced to Star Wars because of the prequel trilogy. They don't see anything wrong with the prequel trilogy. In fact, you know, one of the worst things I think out there is when people say, "Oh, you gotta watch it 4 through 6, and then 1 through 3," and then there's don't even get me started on the machete thing. I will say this: I have been watching it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 now, and I gotta say there are things that you keep on picking up. Like there are things that I sit there and when I watch the prequel trilogy and then start watching the original trilogy, I'm like, wow, Lucas really did think this out. As much as people don't think he did, he really thought this out. Here's my thing. You know, we can sit there and yeah, we can be all over Disney. We can be all over Disney. But you know what? Disney's trying their best. We got the Mandalorian. We've got, you know, the Clone Wars. We've got a lot of good stuff coming out from them. A lot of people didn't like this movie, but Solo was pretty good. I think the only reason why Solo got crapped on was because of the hate for The Last Jedi. And you know what? I didn't like The Last Jedi because of what they did to Luke. But you know what? It's still Star Wars. It wasn't what I wanted to do. It went in a different direction. But that's the thing, and that's what I'm trying to get at in this video is sometimes these things, they don't go the way we want. Rogue One, that's probably the best Disney movie out of it all, even though there are going to be people that will say The Last Jedi is much better. And you know what? They have a right to say that. But this is the thing. We sit there, we want things created in our own image, in our own likeness, you know, how we want it done, and it's not always going to be that way. The original trilogy for me was the bomb. That was my thing, and I love it. And then I look at how they do these things, you know, what's going on. And you know what? I can live with what we have right now. It's not the way I wanted the Skywalker saga to end, you know, but as a lot of people have said, the book, you know, the book should have explained a lot of this in the movie. But that's what we get. We get this thing, we get this franchise, and things are going to change. But here's the point. The point is, things how we grew up are always going to be better back when we were kids than the way they are now. Okay? Case in point, my dad and I used to read comics together. Sounds weird, but you know what? I used to buy Captain America comics. I grew up with this whole story that Captain America was frozen in ice, thawed out in 1964, became Captain America, had some kind of immortality because of the super soldier serum and all sorts of stuff. Well, my dad grew up with Captain America being Captain America through World War II, and during Korea and during Vietnam. But the way I had heard it was he supposedly was killed in action. A guy by the name of Spirit of 76, William Naslund, became the new Captain America. And then 2 other guys before he was thawed out. And then he still got replaced a couple of times, and he's still getting replaced. But here's the point. My dad sat there saying, this is bunk, this is crap, I don't like it. Do you get my point? What I grew up on, I liked. I like that history. It's not the history that my dad grew up on. The character had changed. The character had not been the same. When we look at Star Wars, we see a lot of people talking, oh, wokeness, Rey. Okay. Yeah, I think it was crap what they did with Rey and all this stuff with we wanted Ben Solo to live. We wanted to see the Skywalker bloodline live on. And that wasn't what I got, But here's the thing, we see this, we wonder what's going to happen. There's going to be fan fiction 20, 30, 40 years from now when I'm long gone. That's going to continue the story in people's minds. And that's the thing. We look at what happened. We had the Legends timeline. We had, all these books from like 1990 all the way to, when Disney bought the Star Wars franchise from Lucasfilm, and they put all that away. And so everybody wanted to see Mara Jade. They wanted to see Anakin Solo. They wanted to see Jason and Jaina Solo. They wanted to see Lobaka. They wanted to see all the stuff that we were reading. And that wasn't going to happen. Why? Because it's not what we were going to get. What we wanted to get wasn't what Disney could work with, what Disney wanted to do. And sure, I'm sure there's some wokeness. Let's make a female hero. Let's give the girls something. But there were things that people are sitting there, and people are now trying to figure out how this is going to be, what's going to happen, how's it going to be. And you know what? I'm going to tell you, Star Wars is still going to go strong. Long after I'm gone, it's still going to be a big money maker. Look at how they have The Mandalorian right now. That is the big thing for Disney with Disney Plus. They've got the Clone Wars new season, final season going. Let's talk about the Rebels follow-up, all this stuff. And here is the point, people. The point is, it doesn't matter really what you like at this point. You're going to follow along with it. Even if you're somebody that's like Overlord, DVD, whatever his name is, Doomcock, and some of these other guys, they're sitting there and they think that they're ruining it, that they're running the whole, fandom menace. But you know what? It's because it's not what they wanted. It's not what they wanted. And sometimes, like I said, you go back and you look at how things are in history, and those things have changed. Captain America is not the same Captain America that was my dad's. My dad hated that. Superman has changed over time. Batman has changed over time. We look at the Robins, like my dad grew up with just Dick Grayson. When he heard that there was a Jason Todd, he was like, what the heck is this? That's what I'm talking about, is all these people, they don't understand that for their parents and grandparents, a lot of the things that they like and a lot of the things that they grew up liking that was back in their era is not the same thing. Zorro people, look at Zorro. You can't even figure that timeline out. You can't figure the Phantom out. But nobody's complaining. Here's the fact, okay? For somebody like Victor von Doomcock and, all these other guys out there, they're just never going to get it. They're never going to get it. Why? Because the point is they're fans in name only. They're finos. That's it. Fans in name only. They think they've got all this stuff figured out. They think that people are gonna, go and people blindly follow them. You know what, people? Make up your minds for yourself. Don't follow along what some of these guys are saying. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But the fact is, just give shows a chance. That's it. I didn't like The Last Jedi when it first came out. I like it now. It's not my favorite movie, but I can appreciate it. Didn't like the end of the saga, but I can appreciate it. And that's all. Reverend Geek out.